a novel that centers friendship, loneliness, and hope. To add to your reading list is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. In the novel, we meet Tova Sullivan. After her husband dies, she takes a night job as a janitor at an aquarium. Tova enjoys talking to the sea creatures, and she's particularly fond of Marcellos, a giant octopus, and he becomes fond of her too. We also meet Cameron Cashmore, who joins Tova on the night shift, and the two soon realize that Cameron's mother, who disappeared after leaving him with an aunt, and Tova's son, who died after falling off a boat, might have known each other. And Marcellos, who lived in the sea before his capture, is the only creature who knows for sure. Remarkably Bright Creatures is a fantastical take on a cross-species friendship that is equally charming, witty, and insightful. Remarkably Bright Creatures is being published by Eco Books, and it's a charming, warm-hearted read you really don't want to miss. Welcome to The Reader's Couch, a podcast that brings you lively conversations with some of your favourite authors and bookish personalities. Over here, the couch is always booked, but I've moved some books to the side table and fluffed some cushions so I can welcome a guest or two to come lounge with us. Today on the couch, we have Lian Dolan, and she's here to talk to me about her latest novel, Lost and Found in Paris. A story that follows a woman who is hoping to recover lost art and her sense of adventure. But what she finds is even better than she expected. Stay tuned. The new thriller from the New York Times bestselling author of The Last Flight is The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark. In The Lies I Tell, we meet Meg Williams, Maggie Littleton, Melody Wild. Different names for the same person. Whoever she is, one thing's for sure, she's a con artist who tells you exactly what you need to hear. And by the time she's done, you've likely lost everything. In the novel, we also meet Kat Roberts, who's been waiting 10 years for the woman who upended her life to return. And now that she has, Kat is determined to be the one who exposes her. But as the two women grow closer, Kat's long-held assumptions begin to crumble, leaving Kat to wonder who Meg's true target really is. The Lies I Tell dives deep into the psyches and motivations of two women and their unwavering quest to seek justice for the past and rewrite the future. The Lies I Tell is being published by Sourcebooks Landmark, and it's a twisted domestic thriller you really don't want to miss. Hi readers, welcome again to The Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is the author of The Sweeney Sisters, but she's here to talk to me about her latest novel, Lost and Found in Paris. Please welcome to the couch, Lian Dolan. Hey, Lian.
Hi, Victoria. Thanks for having me.
Yay! I'm super excited to have you here on the couch with me. Can't wait to talk about Lost and Found in Paris, but I want to gauge your excitement with this novel. I mean, it's been out for a few months now. I mean, how are you feeling? How excited are you?
You know what? I feel fantastic that it's out. I mean, there are a lot of reasons for that. It's always exciting to bring a new book out. And my last book, though, came out in April 2020. So The Sweeney Sisters. So that was just the tour where I didn't leave my home, for 2 years, just endless Zoom meetings. So the best part about this has been actually being able to be out to talk to readers again, to see friends and to see family, to see booksellers. There's just been a bubbly excitement in every room I've walked into, not so much because of me, but just because people are happy to be connected again. And then in terms of the book, Lost and Found in Paris was just a long journey. I started it 9 years ago. And for a variety of reasons, it took a long time to get published, some of which were really out of my control, like pandemic, or the publisher decided to bring out the Sweeney Sisters first, or, a variety of reasons. So all in all, it's just been a fantastic launch. I've really enjoyed being out with the book.
Absolutely. So I want readers to hear straight from you, Lian. Tell us about your novel, Lost and Found in Paris, and what can readers expect going in?
Sure. I describe it as an art history treasure hunt set in Paris because when I started writing it, I didn't think of myself as a mystery writer, but there is a little bit of a mystery to it. I didn't want to promise people a mystery, but I felt I could deliver on a treasure hunt. So it's the story of a young art curator, Joan Blakely. She has had some ups and downs in her life, including losing her father on 9/11 and sort of a disastrous marriage that she walked into when she was very young, and her husband's just dropped a bombshell on her. So she's really scrambling to figure out who she is and what she's doing with her life. And she has a professional opportunity to take a piece of artwork from the museum that she works at in Pasadena, California, to Paris. They're going to sell it. They're going to deacquisition the artwork. And all she has to do is be the art courier for it. And she needs that trip to Paris bad. So she heads out. She gets to Paris. She meets a cute guy on a plane. I mean, how often does that happen? Almost never. And but then the artwork disappears. And so Joan spends the next, week trying to find, through a series of clues, trying to find the piece of art in Paris. So it's a Parisian romp. It's fun. It's sexy. There's got some rock and roll in it. There's Paris, but there's also a storyline of grief and loss and figuring out where you are in the world.
Absolutely. And I definitely got those hints. But before we even get into the major themes, I really want us to focus on Joan a bit. She's 31 years old. She has a lot going on. Her parents, first of all, were famous. Her dad was a big person in the art space. Like you mentioned, was killed in 9/11. She's nothing like her parents, but she's been working at this art museum for almost 10 years. And like you mentioned in your description, she needs this trip to Paris bad because the bombshell that her husband drops on her is that he has a whole other family.
Yeah.
He has two children, twins, who are 5 years old. So not only did he have this affair, but, it produced these children. And now he's saying, well, hey, let's be this happy, big, blended family. That's a whole lot to kind of take in. I mean, tell us a bit about Joan. I know she's going through grief, and I really want to get to the theme of grief, but just tell us about Joan and what's going on, especially when her husband, Casey, hits her with this news.
Right. So Joan considers herself, the average daughter of above average parents. I was pretty interested in looking at the idea of fame. I live in the Los Angeles area, and we're just fame adjacent. Like everywhere you walk into, there's the potential that someone better and more famous is there. It's just surprising who you see on the sidelines of your kids' soccer games or at the grocery store at weird times or shopping with you at Banana Republic. It's a strange place to live. And I was particularly intrigued by what it might be like to be the child of famous people, because fame is different than wealth. Fame is just a different level of access, a different level of crazy, of opportunities, of expectations. So I think Joan's story really starts with her parents. I decided to make her father an artist, as you said, and then her mother was a famous model. Back in the days when models were like not role models or wellness CEOs, but back when they just lived on like coffee and cocaine. You know what I mean? Those great models from the 70s that were just so much more beautiful than we were. So Joan feels like she's a pretty average person of these above average parents. And she doesn't have the skill, the talent to go into the art field like her father, or, be a model like her mother. So she's sort of, scraping along though, finding her way. And then when she loses her dad, she's at 21. It's a very critical time in her life. She's just about to start on this adventure and study abroad and figure out what she's going to do with her life. And all of that stops. So she's plodded along. She made the mistake of marrying like the first guy that was nice to her after her father's death. And they just have a one-sided relationship. He's sort of in it for her family name and she's in it because it was comforting, but there's not a lot there left. So when he drops this bombshell on her, it's almost like the kick in the pants she needs to just say, okay, enough is enough. That decade was a mistake. Go on with your life. Goodbye. I'm not interested in becoming a part of this like big blended family. That's just not really where I'm at right now. But that was based on a true story, Victoria. That happened to a friend of mine 20 years ago. She found out when the youngest of her 4 children was in kindergarten that her husband had two other kindergartners in another school. I mean, it's not funny, but it was like, what? It was just a crazy thing. And I've heard of these secret families over the years, and I thought, that's just such a giant bombshell. Like, you can't really recover from that. So you're totally justified in kind of saying, goodbye, Casey. I'll see you. I got to go take care of myself for the next decade. But, Joan she's smart. She's steady. She's been the steady force in her family for the last 10 years. When her mom was really struggling to cope with her father's death, Joan was sort of the public face of their very public grieving process. But she's ready to have some fun now. She's ready to have some fun.
Absolutely, because the past 10 years just went by. And that's the funny thing with time, too. And the older you get, it seems to be just going by even faster. So, I was really happy to read about Joan and the fact that she was actually, making a decision to reclaim essentially her life and rediscover the person that she lost. And for me, that was a very powerful theme because, she's also grieving her parents but also trying to find herself. So it's like retracing those steps 10 years ago, but also making new steps forward. So the timing of, her husband presenting this plan, it really was the kick in the ass she needed.
Yeah.
And then work. Let's throw in work. So now, work, sometimes things come at a good time. So she really needs this trip to Paris. And what she's doing on this trip is she is taking a set of sketches from the museum where she works to Paris so that a buyer can take, a look at it and so on. So that makes sense. It gives her that escape. She can lock up her apartment, change her locks like she did, and start her divorce proceedings, but then head on over to Paris. Like you said, she meets a cute guy. So on the plane, she meets Nate, which you're absolutely right. Who meets a cute guy on an airplane?
Somebody must have once, or it wouldn't be a trope, right? True. Yeah. I mean, we're always hopeful. When I was young and single, I was always hopeful there was going to be a guy on a plane.
A guy on a plane, a guy on a train, a guy just happened somewhere. Yeah. And it just never happened. Never happened for me either when I was single. But anyway, Joan meets Nate. He's super smart, he's thoughtful, clearly attractive. And, she takes the opportunity to get together with him because she wants to forget about Casey. And she hooks up with this guy, but the morning after, the sketches she brought over disappeared. Where did that idea come from?
My niece is actually an art courier, right? So when I was trying to fish around for what might Joan's job be that would connect her to the art world, but not be the same as what her parents did, I happened to have a conversation with my niece, who was an assistant curator at the time at the Guggenheim. And that was her job, was as this junior curator, she had to schlep the paintings from New York to the Guggenheim in Venice or the Guggenheim in Bilbao or Vegas. And it sounds glamorous, but it's not. You spend a lot of time in warehouses and filling out paperwork, and you don't sleep till, the painting's on the wall. And when she told me this, it was like my head exploded because I was like, how has there not been a book about this? This is a fantastic career for a book series because it's unusual. You're moving artwork around. That's a lot of fun. So I went home and I, did my research. I Googled what is an art courier and came up with a bunch of stories. And I happened upon a series of stories from the New York Post about a real life art courier in New York who was just moving a painting from a buyer to a seller, just a private art courier. And what happened? He happened to see his old boyfriend on the street. They went for lunch. He had too much to drink. He got in a cab and forgot the painting in the cab, and the painting disappeared. And I was like, oh, wow, that's good. I could steal from that. And then I read the follow-up story, which was even better, which was that after 5 years, the FBI figured out that the art courier had set it all up himself. So I thought, oh my gosh, I thought it was going to be complicated to do an art heist story. I was thinking like Mission Impossible with people dropping out of the ceiling at the Louvre and stuff like that. But no, it's just like people getting drunk and getting in a cab. I can do that. So that's where that story came from, was sort of a random conversation with my niece and then doing some follow-up research and kind of adapting it to my needs. I just thought it would be a fun way to see Paris.
Right, absolutely. I loved it. And my favorite part actually is the letters, the envelopes that just start showing up. She even gets a note from a notebook that she thought was long lost with her dad on the plane. But there were lots of clues as to what was going on. And for me, that was just kind of, I like the letters. I don't know why. Now I'm drawing a blank on describing it.
Yeah, well, they're like poems. They're like clues and poems, and then we come to find out later what they really are as lyrics. But
Yes.
I enjoyed that too. It was a sort of I like having the chance to write in different formats in the book, because I've spent a lot of my writing career doing stuff other than novels. I spent the first 15 years of my writing life writing magazine columns, or writing for the podcast I do, or writing videos. I was in the sports business for a while, so I wrote stuff for athletes and speeches and things like, and presentations. And so I like in my books when I have the opportunity to kind of move around with what the writing is. So whether it's a Wikipedia entry or something like the clues, I really enjoy that.
Absolutely. That for me was just great. So I want to get into your writing life real quick. How long did it take? I know you said you were working on this for like 9 years, but
Right.
how long did it kind of take for you to pull this novel together?
Well, this was an unusual one. So this is my 4th novel. It was lengthy because I started it too soon, basically, Victoria. I was writing a book that was supposed to be a fun, sexy romp in Paris, but had this grief storyline. And I had just lost my 2 parents within like 8 weeks of each other. And I just hadn't really allowed for the grieving process to happen. So I started to write this book. And then about a year after my dad's death, I just hit a wall. So I actually put it aside for a couple of years, which is unusual for me. And then I wrote another book, and I developed a TV show, and I kept doing the podcast. And so then about, in 2016, I said, okay, I'm going to finish that book. My agent's like, hey, when's that Paris book going to be into me? So then I sat down, and I had a lot of work to do on it. So it took about 18 months at that point to write. And then it was ready. And it sold to William Morrow. But I also had pitched the Sweeney sisters in that same meeting. So I had one completed manuscript and a pitch, and they bought both. But then they wanted to bring out the Sweeney sisters first. So then I had to sit down and write the Sweeney sisters in 6 months, which is more my usual time frame. And then, then the pandemic hit. And so then this pub date was pushed back. So it was only like last summer, actually, where I finally got the notes from the editor and did the rewrites and pulled it together. So so probably all in all, it was about 2.5, 3 years of writing, but it was over the course of 9 years. So normally, though, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that as a strategy. With the Sweeney sisters, I pulled together from pitch to finished manuscript. That was a year. I'm currently working on the first of my next 2 books. Again, it will be a much tighter time frame. Within a year, from idea to finished manuscript, I will be handing it in. So that's a better time frame, but this was an unusual one.
Right, absolutely. I'm happy you mentioned the Sweeney sisters, and it's very interesting that they wanted to publish the Sweeney sisters first, because I absolutely adored that book. It was so good. I loved Lost and Found in Paris. I thought that was more fun, but I was just so fascinated with the Sweeney sisters. So you guys, if you haven't read that one, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to pick up that book.
Thank you. I loved it too. And it came out at a time when all the bookstores in America were closed and people had a lot of other things on their mind. So I'm glad that people have discovered it now in paperback and in Kindle, because I love that book. I love the story of the sisters.
I loved it. It was great. And then that 4th sister that kind of like appeared out of nowhere was just, because you know what? I was reminded when you made mention about the Casey having the 2 children and Joan only finding out later that was, inspired by something that happened with a friend of yours. And I actually had a friend who discovered she had a whole sister when she was making a food order at a food court. I know this sounds insane.
It sounds good. I like it. What happened?
She made an order. So we were sitting and she went over to make her food order and she wrote her name down. And, normally people don't put their full names. Like when you go to Starbucks, it's your first name or whatever. But for her, because her first name is a bit tricky to pronounce, she would always just put the first initial and then her last name. Well, another girl with not easily pronounced name, same thing, but same last name. So when they were called for the food, they were looking at each other. And I promise you, they look so much alike. And that's how that story, she's like, hi, you're a whatever. And it's an uncommon last name. I don't want to say it here, but it's just an uncommon last name. It's not Brown. It's not Williams or, just something super common. It's very unpopular. And both these girls, they looked alike to me. Yeah, they looked alike. It's just like one was just more tan than the other. And they sat down, started asking questions of each other.
Gosh.
It was fun and light until they realize, it's just fun, light girl talk till they realize they both share the same father.
Oh my God.
Yes. And my girlfriend, the dad lives with her mom. You know what I mean? So it was like this whole other girl. And they actually became close after that. So I don't know if that's the reason why I kind of really latched onto the Sweeney sisters. Again, I think it's really, really good. But it's just that you never know who might have another sibling out there in the world kind of thing. And what would you do? And because we have all these DNA testing happening now, which is the premise of the Sweeney sisters. So no, you guys, it's not a person meeting in a random food court. It's DNA testing. We have the Ancestry, we have the this, we have the that out there, and 21andMe, all these different things. Some people are finding relatives, and that's essentially what your book is about.
I have done probably about 75 book clubs for the Sweeney sisters and, group talks all over Zoom. And every single talk I do, someone finally at the end will raise their hand and say, I found out I had a sister, a brother, a cousin. My uncle was really my father, not my father. I mean, every single one. And so I think that's why when I pitched that story to the editor at Morrow, they felt like it was timely. Books don't really turn on a dime. That's not the way the publishing business works. You can't really capture a news trend. But they did feel like those DNA tests had been marketed for like fun family Christmas present. And then, then they started blowing families apart. It was just unbelievable. It was just a really unforeseen side effect of, ooh, look how fun this is. And so that's why they said, okay, we like Lost and Found in Paris, but we want you to get right on this because we do feel like it's timely because these stories were starting to come out all over the place. I mean, your friend's story is, that's unbelievable. Like if you had pitched that to an editor, they would have said, well, that's too unbelievable. We can't publish that book. But yeah, mine was just inspired by a post on our Facebook group at Satellite Sisters where these three adults, it was a picture of three people in their 50s. And the comment was just, I'm not going to go into details, but we met our brother. We're welcoming someone new into the family. And we have a super nice Facebook group. So everyone's like, oh, that's so great. That's so super. And I'm looking at that thinking, that sounds like a nightmare. Like I already have 7 siblings. I don't want another sibling showing up. I certainly don't want to think about the sex lives of my parents at all. So I thought there was a lot of room for that. I thought it was a good, jumping off point for a story. So that's how the Sweeney sisters came about, was sort of me considering a real Facebook post.
Right. I mean, again, it's just, it's wild, the things that are happening. And you're right. It's like a Christmas present. And again, for purposes of the conversation, I'm going to call my friend T, but like what happened for her, that was just wild. It was a food court. No one could have predicted it. But you know what? It's like the woman lived in the same town, which kind of reminds me of Joan and her husband, Casey, because they live down the road.
Right. Close, but not in the same world. Like they live close to each other physically, but they weren't in the same social circles, Joan and the baby mama. So that's kind of what made it work. And also what made it worse, that they were right there the whole time and he was lying the whole time about their
Exactly. And that's what happens with my friend T. It's their moms are in different social circles, but it's all within a 10-15 mile radius. And one child is going to one school and the other child is going to another. You know what I mean? So it's like you're so close yet so far.
Right.
And all it took was just both of you being in a food court ordering food. And because you both have unique first names that are hard to pronounce, you just wrote down your first initial and your last name. It was pure coincidence that they both do that, but they both have difficult first names.
Right. which I can relate to. so, but but oh my gosh, I mean that's an incredible story. But it's complicated, it's that's sort of the meet cute of it, but the relationship will be complicated for their whole lives. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. But that is why I loved both the Sweeney sisters and now Lost and Found in Paris. I think you do a great job writing families and friendship and, just the crazies that sometimes happen, but also giving us a good laugh and, yeah, just kind of really taking us on a journey. So I thought both books accompanied each other together. They just work, what I'm saying, and I love them.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So you mentioned earlier that you are working on another book. You have 2 books in the works. So if you don't mind, I like to get any little early information, early tea, anything you can share about what the next book might be about.
Sure, I'm open to I'm open to comments on this one. I've been sort of workshopping it with people. Conceptually, it's a little bit different for me. I've written now like 4 books where I have these 30-something main characters or women in their early 30s or early 40s and single, struggling, divorced. And I really wanted to take a look in my next book at a long-time married couple, which doesn't really sound that sexy, because I'm someone I'm Gen X. I've been married for 28 years. We pay our taxes, we do yard work, and we sit on the couch and watch like British mysteries. And there's no novel in that. But I do think there's something interesting about a long-term married relationship. So I started to fish around for what would be a more interesting way to explore what it really means to be married for a long time and how your views of marriage and relationships change the longer you're in a relationship. Like once you put 20, 25 years into something, you're not going to throw it away quite so quickly as you might have if you were burned in your early 30s. So I came up with the concept of a marriage sabbatical. So the book is called The Marriage Sabbatical. And it's about a couple who've been married over 20 years. They have an opportunity to take a work sabbatical. The husband does. He gets a year off of his job. And the kids are on their junior years abroad. So they think it's a perfect time as a family. We'll take a year off. And it's going to be this adventure trip into Patagonia, into Nicaragua. And shortly before the beginning of the trip, the wife says, I have zero interest in going on this trip. Nothing about this trip appeals to me. I don't want to do that. I want to take my own sabbatical, and I think it's a good idea, but I don't want to do what you're doing. So the couple agrees to take separate sabbaticals, and they sort of negotiate how this is going to work. And one of the things they negotiate is that all bets are off. So they're released from everything, including their marriage vows, for a year. No questions asked.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
I'm just like, wow. Okay, so Gen X are here as well.
Yeah.
As well. I haven't hit the 20-year mark yet, but I am excited.
Yeah. When people think about it, they're like, okay, that sounds pretty good, actually. I don't think you would say that if you were only married 5 or 10 years. But after 20 years and, 2.5 years in lockdown, I think a lot of people are ready for a sabbatical from their spouses. Not that they don't love them, but just a chance to go do your own thing for a year is kind of the way I look at it. So over the course of the book, there's going to be some flashbacks to, the full brunt of their 20-year marriage and how they got to this place and what that meant. But also, some pretty exciting, sexy times ahead. Is basically how I'm billing it. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's exciting. I can't wait to just get the flashbacks on their marriage, to see how they got here today. But you're absolutely right. After lockdown, after everything, I mean, we need space sometimes. And I know it sounds cruel. It really sounds cruel. And it doesn't make me love my husband any less. It doesn't mean, oh, you don't want to be around the children. But sometimes you do need that breathing space and also to kind of find yourself again. So I'm hoping maybe there's some of that in there too, because I'm all about finding themselves, because I do believe you change after being married, and how you felt, like you said, about marriage, year 1, year 5, year 10, year 15. again, my next big milestone will be 20. So, it's going to be very interesting hitting that for sure.
Yeah. And I do think, I mean, to speak to pour up for our generation, Gen X, I mean, we are the forgotten generation, but I also think in terms of particularly women, we were we weren't on the front edge. We weren't on the front edge of working moms. We weren't really the have it all generation. That was like my older sisters. They had to do
Yes.
everything and pretend it was no big deal. Like Gen X, we could at least acknowledge that this is hard. But we were
Yeah.
part of the mommy wars. There was all that, the stay-at-home moms versus the working moms, which that was so it's all media related. I mean, Gen Xers, we followed the rules. We worked hard. Like we did what we were told. We kind of, tried to do the right thing. I think we get a reputation as being slackers, but that is not my experience from people who grew up around me. We all had terrible high school jobs. We moved on and we took our little corporate job and we got paid nothing but we put on our Ann Taylor outfits and we went to work and we tried our hardest and so I definitely am sort of looking at that like, if you had the chance to sort of make some changes from the choices you made in your 20s, would you? Like, and how can you manifest that in your 40s or early 50s? So that's sort of, the fantasy part of it, that you get a chance to kind of do a do-over in the middle of your life.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm sold. Here we go again.
Okay.
I'm personally invested. Third book in a row from Lian Dolan. No, seriously, you guys. I know we're here to talk Lost and Found in Paris, but if you haven't, really get the Sweeney Sisters and then let's get prepared for the next book.
Yeah, I have to finish it. So this is the first time I've been on a schedule where I'm out promoting one book and writing a second. And that's hard. I have to say that's a challenge for me as a writer to sort of compartmentalize and get that focus back. So this is actually one of the last things I'm doing for my book tour because next week the switch is turned off and I gotta finish that draft to get it in by the end. But in 8 weeks. So.
Well, we're going to make a date that whenever the next book graces bookshelves, we're going to have a talk on how that whole thing went, promoting a book, writing a book, and, being on this schedule, because I really want to hear about it. Plus, we have to discuss the next one. Proud Gen Xer here, so I'm here for it.
Okay, good.
Amazing. All right, Lian. So again, even though we're here to talk about Lost and Found in Paris, I want to know what you're reading. So share with our listeners the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
Oh, good. I'm happy to do this. I put together a summer reading list every year, so I do a lot of reading in the springtime, in the winter and spring to get out ahead of stuff. I loved Vacationland by Meg Mitchell-Moore. That's coming out in a couple of weeks. I like her writing a lot. I think she really sort of understands family dynamics. This is a book about marriage and family secrets and motherhood and privilege, and it's set on the coast of Maine in a beautiful house. And, it's a wife from Brooklyn who's sort of re-examining her whole marriage and what she's doing with her life. So I really enjoyed that. I would recommend it. Vacationland by Meg Mitchell-Moore. I loved The Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons. Have you heard of that book?
Ooh, no.
Okay, well, did you read The Lost Apothecary last year? I mean, everybody read it. So, okay, if you like that, this is a little bit like that in the sense that there's a lot of poisons and plants and things like that. But it's set in 1923 London. Our main character is she's a botanist, but she finds herself in the middle of a murder mystery. And so she's also, trying to make her way in academics in the 1920s in London, which is very male dominated. So she's a super appealing main character. It's a lot of fun. It's a debut from author Kate Kavari, and I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the plants and the poisons and the parties and the London academics. I thought it was a lot of fun. The Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons. And then the last one I would recommend is Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. And this is just a super fun summer romance. Like, put your feet up, get a glass of wine, sit on the front porch and rip through this one. The main character writes Hallmark movies, basically. So that's funny. And she ends up getting involved with a very famous actor. But there are a lot of real laugh out loud lines in the book. So I just appreciated that. Like, it's just a fresh, fun take on a woman being able to reinvent herself in midlife. That's Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan.
Amazing. So what books are you looking forward to reading in the year ahead, Lian?
Okay, well, I love the Sonali Dev series about, have you read this? It's an Indian American twist on the Jane Austen. So the next one is just coming out, the Emma Project. So I'm looking forward to that. I enjoyed the other two, and this is the last one in the series. I'm super looking forward to that. I haven't had a chance to read The Palace Papers by Tina Brown, but I love Tina Brown so much, and she's so good at her job, and she just has so much inside scoop on the royal family. So even though I think royalty is pretty ridiculous, I always love Tina Brown's take on it. So I've heard that the audiobook is fantastic. So that's on my list. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And then in the fall, I already read this one, but it's Hester. I have to look up the name of the author. It's the story, as imagined, the inspirational story behind the character Hester Prynne. So it involves Nathaniel Hawthorne and witches and Massachusetts and this just very interesting interpretation of a real life relationship that Nathaniel Hawthorne had with a woman that might have inspired Hester Prynne. And that one, I think, will be a big bestseller in the fall. I was very impressed. I loved it.
Ooh, amazing. Awesome. I haven't read that one yet, but it's on my list too. So
Okay. Yeah, it's good.
awesome. Alrighty. So we love books, we love authors, but we also love our local indie bookstores. So share with our listeners some of your favorite local bookstores.
Well, I'm here in Southern California. I'm very lucky to live in Pasadena, where we have, it may be the oldest bookstore west of the Mississippi. It's Vroman's in Pasadena. It's sort of a legendary local bookstore. It was started in the 1800s, so it's well over 100 years old. It's an amazing store that has thrived over the last couple of years. They do great author events. They've been incredibly supportive of my career here as a writer, as a local writer here in Los Angeles. And so I'm always happy to give Vroman's a shout out. It's a must-see if you come to Pasadena. It's just gorgeous. Another beautiful Southern California local bookstore is Pages in Manhattan Beach. So if you're lucky enough to live in the Manhattan Beach area or to be vacationing, this is just a charming seaside bookstore it was started by three moms in the area, 15 years ago, and they've really made it a real hub there. They have wonderful events. They really curate the books in the front window. They have great taste. So I'm always happy to plug Pages. And then another one in Southern California that I love is Laguna Beach Books. Laguna Beach is just, I don't know, it's heaven on earth, I think. It's absolutely gorgeous. So again, maybe you're invited out for a wedding. Lucky you. A lot of fancy hotels there. Laguna Beach Books is just the perfect little seaside bookstore. And I think the women there do an amazing job curating their selection and their recommendations.
Oh, that's awesome. Amazing. So kind of getting back to Lost and Found in Paris, I know you've done your job, you've written the book, you've given it to us. I mean, it sounds like this book has been a long time coming, so I'm finally happy it's here. But in an ideal world, what are you hoping for, Lian, when readers turn the last page on Lost and Found in Paris? What are the reactions you're hoping for, or just maybe some thoughts you're hoping readers might have?
Oh, I absolutely want people to feel like they just took a vacation in Paris. Like a sexy, fun, rock and roll, oops, we had too much wine one night kind of vacation in Paris, And I'm happy to say when people have posted that, that's in the reviews, or they let me know they read it and it felt like they were in Paris, or they've been dreaming about Paris and this just really took them there. Like, that's absolutely what I hope, that it's just this romp that has some substance and some characters you care about. You learn a little bit of art history and a little bit of history, but mainly just that you have vacationed in Paris for the week. That's what I hope.
Amazing. Well, I think you did that job. I had so much fun with Joan and just following along her journey. So there was substance, it was light, it was fun. There was a little hint of mystery. I know you're not promising it, but I enjoyed it. I had a great time. And thank you so much, Lian, for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, Victoria, thank you. This was really fun. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you're doing to promote writers and authors and bookstores. This is the ecosystem needs you. So thank you so much.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much too. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Reader's Couch. You can find out more about the show and submit your questions for our guest by visiting our website, thereaderscouch.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Couch is Booked. If you like the show, please subscribe, share, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Next week, I'll be back with new guests, more books, and some fun games we can play. But until then, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.